What's up everybody, and welcome back to Interpreting the Stars. Today I'm joined once again by my buddy Mike from Did You See That to discuss a comedy that I've been meaning to watch ever since I first saw it in the year it came out, 2015. Film in question is Absolutely Anything. Let's get cracking. Absolutely Anything stars Simon Pegg as Neil, a man that has been randomly selected by a number of aliens in outer space as a subject to test if the human race is worth saving or something that deserves annihilation. They do this by granting him the power to do anything that he wants essentially, and they watch as he makes a fool out of himself and everybody around him. So before I go too far with this review, I wanted to give Mike a huge shout out and thanks for joining me on my channel once again. It's been a little while, but I know that you're a busy guy lately, which is actually pretty awesome. So guys, if you haven't yet, please do me a solid, head over to Mike's channel. I have left a link to that in my description box below for you to check out. He has a ton of great content over there, including a lot of movie reviews like me, and he's also constantly live over there with a ton of guests, so there's never a dull moment on Did You See That. So head over there, give him some love, and tell him who sent you. Me. We'll of course be hearing what Mike has to say about Absolutely Anything in just a hot second! But first, let me tell you some of the good to be found in this movie. The absolute best thing about this film is Simon Pegg's sense of humor, which shines pretty strong here. The entire film definitely goes off of the over-exaggerated concept of just be careful what you wish for, because it might come true, as 90% of the things that his character does aren't really specific enough to what he wants to see happen. So, for instance, if he wishes for a better body, he initially gets a female body because he didn't signify gender. Or when a bunch of people die in an event and he wishes that everybody was alive again, he didn't signify from that event. So everybody that ever died suddenly rose from the dead and there's a temporary zombie apocalypse. The list goes on and on and on. This film is filled to the brim almost consecutively with that type of humor, because this guy just isn't specific enough in his wishes. And so the outcome is almost never the intention. The idea there is indeed hilarious, and the sheer amount of material for that same running gag in this film, it actually kind of impresses me because there's a lot there. In a big way though, I often regard this movie as the British version of Bruce Almighty, because that's essentially what we got here. An everyday schmuck that wants a better life but isn't getting it. Suddenly he's granted the ability to do anything that he wants, and instead of bettering the life of everybody around him, he focuses quite selfishly on himself and making himself look amazing, while the love of his life gets pushed further and further away from him in the process. The only real difference between the two, of course, Bruce Almighty, it was God that gave Jim Carrey's character the godlike powers, and in this it's a bunch of nightmare fuel looking aliens in outer space. And I also have to mention, Bruce Almighty, it wasn't a running gag in that movie. It had a much better handle on the message that it was trying to convey. So all around, Bruce Almighty, miles better. This film does have some issues though, and I'll talk about that in a second. First, let me hand it over to Mike. Mike, did you enjoy this movie?
Dave and everyone over at Interpreting the Stars, what's going on? Hey man, it's been a good long while since we've done a collab on your channel, but thank you for inviting me on once again to talk about the movie this time, Absolutely Anything. Now, I remember seeing this in the cinema in 2015, and I remember really enjoying it, having a good crowd, everyone was just having a good time, and overall I think I remember walking out of that movie pretty happy. I also remember that it was released on my birthday of that year, so I actually saw it on my birthday. So yeah, you know, I had good memories with this movie. So Dave, when you asked me to jump on this collaboration, I was like, oh heck yeah, you know, this movie, haven't seen this in around 8 years. And ultimately, after getting out of this movie and watching this movie, what can I ultimately say? Well, unfortunately, Dave, I can't really say it holds up as good as I remember. Now, don't get me wrong, it's got an all-star stellar cast, and you know, with that cast, I feel like this runtime is very short. Also, you know, they don't overstretch the runtime or anything. I think the issues lie with Absolutely Anything is the fact that the movie has so much going on that it forgets to focus a lot more on our main two characters of Kate Beckinsale and Simon Pegg. Now, I think that they do have good chemistry for what they're given, but they aren't given enough to fully win you over by the end of the movie, which is unfortunate. But I will say I did have some chuckles here. I did find that there was some enjoyment still to be had. There were some moments that generally did make me chuckle, as I mentioned, and I had a good time with, and I was like, oh wow, you know, about to put a smile on my face. But ultimately, by the end of it, I mean, the cast, besides kind of Kate Beckinsale and Robin Williams as the dog, Dennis, and of course Simon Pegg, the rest of the cast, except John Cleese, I wasn't really too bothered by. I haven't seen Monty Python, so I don't have any attachment to that. And I think the alien designs is very ugly here. I mean, I know that they were trying to do them a little bit differently, and I can respect that, but some of the kind of green screen CG here was bad. Like, some of it was kind of goofy enough you could look past it when Neil is waving his hand to get used to his powers right at the beginning of the movie, like the dog poo walking away and stuff and getting himself dressed, like that stuff. Like, I didn't mind the green screen was bad, but it made sense, whereas like some of the rest of it just didn't. And ultimately, Dave, unfortunately I can't say that it is a movie that I'm going to be kind of like stuck with and I really want to check out again, because unfortunately it's not, and I really wish it was, because I think under the tones here, and I think under this like simple story, I think is a great movie, and I think that this could have been a very memorable one, to the point where it could have been a rewatch like every single year, like one that goes in the Blu-ray collection, and just a movie that should have been remembered, especially as this was Robin Williams' kind of one of his final ever performances. And I think even he is relegated to this Dennis the Talking Dog, but even his dialogue isn't great in the movie for the material that he's given, and we all know Robin Williams to be an absolute genius. So I was very surprised to see that I didn't really get a chuckle out of his comedy here, and I really wish I did. They go for kind of like one running joke with the dog between Dennis and Neil, and it just didn't work for me, Dave. So yeah, man, thanks for having me on once again. It's been an absolute blast, and it's been way too long. Hopefully next time it isn't as long, but thank you for asking me to jump on absolutely anything. It's definitely a movie that I didn't think was terrible, but I didn't think was great. So with that in mind, back over to you, Dave, and everyone at Interpreting Stars. Thank you once again for having me on, and I'll see you in the next video.
Thank you once again to Mike from Did Ya See That for joining me to discuss absolutely anything. I'm sorry you didn't love it, but as soon as you said that, I knew why, because either did I. I mean, I like the idea. I love the concept. There was definitely something there. And I believe, based off of what you said, you feel exactly the same way. That this was something that you could have almost watched every year as a tradition if they went a slightly different route. And I know that that's the case for me too, man, because that's how I see Bruce Almighty. Bruce Almighty is a tradition for me, and something that I watch nearly every year because I love it so much. And they handle this concept amazingly. But you're right, something about this movie specifically falls flat. And I think it's the humor. Even though Simon Pegg's humor works as well as it does, there's simply too much of it. There's too much of a running gag here to be careful what you wish for, because at the end of the day, it ends up being something that works better in clip format. Like if it was a short sketch series that you watched on TikTok of somebody that has all the power in the world but can never get what they want anyway because they're too stupid to do the right thing. That's amazing. That's clever. That's classic. That I can get behind, and Simon Pegg would be the man to do it too. But in full-length, feature-length movie format, it gets dull fast because there's just not even the semblance of an actual narrative or message going on here. There's just too much of that running gag, which kills the story, which kills the character development, which kills the chemistry between said characters. There simply just wasn't enough time for any of that. Nobody is trying to do anything specific in the film. Nobody at all, other than maybe the aliens. But like Mike said, the aliens look like trash, and they're not even focused on enough for it to even matter for the narrative. And if you don't really have much of a narrative, you don't really have the obstacles. And if you don't have the obstacles, your climax is bound to be anticlimactic, which it is, and you're just gonna have a hard time altogether connecting or caring at the end of the day. And I truly believe that that is the main issue that is found in absolutely anything. The movie gets to be boring because it's a sketch show blended together to feel like a movie, and it doesn't. Mike, I am sorry, the film threw us both for a loop actually, because I also thought I was going into a movie that I remember really enjoying. But to be fully honest with you, man, if you loved it as much as you remember loving it the first time that you saw it, and if I also felt the same, why exactly have we only ever seen it once? What held us back from visiting it again? It's a good question, because I think it speaks volumes for what this film is. What did I score it? A C letter grade, final overall score of 64%, 64 out of 100 possible stars. And just looking at my technical score down below, you see that's 54 because there's just not much sustenance to be found in this film whatsoever. It mostly stayed in the safe zone a majority of the time and refused to take any kind of positive risk. My bias score was a little bit higher because there are aspects that I like, and I think that they achieve what they set out for, which deserves praise, but at the end of the day, a 64% score is way lower than I thought I would ever give it upon rewatch. Well, thanks for joining me anyway, Mike, and everybody watching, let me know what you thought about absolutely anything in the comments section down below. And for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit the like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out.